Daf Kuf Yu Dalid Amud Aleph 26 lines from the top by the Gemara. Tana Breta taught, a Breta taught, Im Natal, if someone took a donkey from the customs collector, Mahazir the Ba'alim Rishonim, you have to return it to the original owner. Against what we just said in our Mishnah yesterday, that you don't have to return it, you could keep it. This Breta holds that Yeush, the giving up, the despair of getting it back, does not make an acquisition, and therefore, therefore, the guy who bought the donkey got it via Isur. We could have a different way explaining it. If after getting the donkey, he wants to give it back, he should give it back to the original owner. So it's not a chiyuv. My time, why Yeush? Just Yeush, just the guy giving up, you acquired it. Mehu, but if the guy is a tzaddik and says, I don't want it if it doesn't belong to me and wants to give it back, you give it back to the original owner. Okay, next part of the Mishnah said, if the guy gave him an item, he could keep it because the guy had given the custom collectors gave him an item, he could keep it because we can assume they had Yeush. Amar Vashe, it only applies to a robber that was a goy. But not a Jewish robber because he's not going to just take the Jew guy to court tomorrow and I'll get it back. Maskif letter of Yosef, and Yosef says, no, the opposite. Adraba. The opposite makes sense. In the case if a goy did it, he thinks he had a chance of getting it back because the bedin of the courts of the non-Jews are much more powerful. He said, okay, yes, but because of a Jewish guy, if he has taken to bedin of a Jewish court, he has less of a chance to get it back because he thinks that they'll just tell him to return it, but they can't force it. Eli Itmar, therefore, they re-explain Rashi. Asefa Itmar is referring to the second part of the Mishnah. Hamasil minha gayas minha lishlim. Someone saves someone else's item from someone rescues something from a troop or from a bandit. The owner gave up, you can keep it. Bistam Allah, but sounds like if we don't know if he gave up or not, you cannot keep it. Because they rule with force. But Jewish bandits, since Jewish courts can't really force the guy to get it back, you assume that the owner gave up. It's not the Mishnah. In regarding to tum'ah, that if you want to, an item that is not complete will not susceptible to tum'ah. It cannot catch tum'ah unless it's a completed item. Now, for some people, some things are completed before others. For example, a hide. A hide for a tanner is not complete. He's changing it. A hide for a balabait, if he thinks that he just needs a doormat and he'll use the hide as a doormat, then it counts. So we're going to say that the thought process is a big contributing factor to what makes it completed item, and thereby making it also susceptible to tumah. So Oroch Balabait, the regular guy who has hides, his thought can make him tumah. He thinks, okay, I don't want to do anything to it. I don't want to make it into shoes. I'd rather have it as a hide. I want to use it as a doormat. Then it's already susceptible to tumah. But regarding the tanner, even if the tanner wants to use it as a doormat, it does not make it tameh right away because it's not considered complete because there's a chance that someone comes to sell it to him. Shal Gazlan, regarding of a Gazlan is a robber who takes by force openly during the day. And the thought process does not make it tameh because the guy did not give up hope. Regarding Ganav, since the guy is a Ganav who steals quietly and he can't find who it is, then maybe by them the thought process makes it tumah because he has no way of getting back, so he gave up hope. Rabbi Shimon is the opposite. Shel Gazan, the guy who steals outright in the daytime, his thought process does make it tumah. Why? Because he acquired it. Shel Ganav, regarding to a Ganav, stealer by nighttime, because the owner did not give up. Because he said, okay, the guy is a scaredy cat, he stole something quietly, I'll find him and I'll get it back. The Gazlan who stole openly, according to Rabbi Shimon, he doesn't care. He's powerful. Maybe he's mafia, so maybe I can't get it back. Amar Ula. Mahloket Bistam, this only plays to where we're not sure whether the guy had Yush. Alabiadua, Divrei HaKol, Yush Kani. But if we know that there was Yush, Yush is Koneh. Rabbi Amar Bas says, no, but even if we didn't know. If that's the case, don't argue with Ula, because the Mishnah says like him. If you should learn it to Shavalim, because the Mishnah clearly says that the owner did not give up hope yet. That sounds like because the owner did not give up hope, but then if there was Yush, if there was hope given, well, if hope was given up, then you are Kohen. Bomb question against Rabbah. Rabbah says, no, no. I'm not in the fish any Yush. We actually, the Mishnah, our version of the Mishnah actually says, because there is no Yush at all. Not that there is Yush, not the Yush. He says, our Mishnah says there isn't any Yush. Okay, Tan. Mishnah said, Natlu Mechsun Chamorov, someone took the donkey from me. If the custom place took his donkey and gave it to someone else, gave him a different donkey, you can keep it. And because the Ushmani, who's it going to? Kasha Gazlan. If it's going to Rabbanan, then you have a question against a Gazlan, the guy who steals publicly. Right? Because Rabbanan held that you only have Yush by a thief, by an overnight robber. But a Gazlan, you don't have Yush. Either Bishmon or Bishmon, Kasha Ganavi, was stira against the robber because he said that there's only a case Yush by a robber, overnight stealer, but not by a bandit, a thief who steals during the daytime, which is against the Mishnah. That is where the guy already had Yush, that makes it a Kinyan Hachanam Bedush. Therefore, we say over here also, he had Yush, and we all know it. Who says even if you already know there is Yush, how many who's it according to? The Rabbi Shimon doesn't fit. When I says no, the list is Rabbi Shimoni. It's according to Rabbi Shimon, who says the robber, the victim of a robber has the Yush, and over here it's another type of robber. What's the other type of robber? It's a robber that is armed. And Rabbi Shimon would agree in that case. So the Gemara says, a robber that comes at night is the same thing the guy that comes at during daytime. They're forcibly taking something, whether it's broad daylight or nighttime, but they are not hiding under a rock. They're both Gazlans. So what is the case? What's the difference? The Gemara says, today Gazlan. Yes, it's true. You're not teaching you two halachot regarding Gazlan. Tashma, a thief, a robber, and a anas, a guy who forces sales. He'll walk over to your property, take five peppers, and drop the money in your mailbox, saying thank you so much for your business. Forces sales. Hekdesh, if they made it hekdesh, it becomes hekdesh. Utrumatan truma, if there's a dik. So the these people are they're taking off truma, it comes truma. Uma'aser tehen, ma'aser, if they make something ma'aser, it counts as ma'aser. So we see that they acquired it, because if you don't acquire it, then you can't do any of these. So we see that it does work. Mani, who's according to Yerbanan Kasha Gazan? If it's according to Rabbanan, same thing. Question against the Gazlan. Either Bishimon Kasha Ganav, the Ganav doesn't fit. Same exact format as before. It makes it according to Ulo says that if you know the guy gave up hope, that's a good acquisition. Over here we can say that the guy gave up and everybody agrees. I know that about the Amar Biadu Nami says even when you do know that it was stolen, Yush, Hamani, the Shimon doesn't fit. This case is the armed robber. The same question and answer. Same thing as the Gazan. Two types of Gazanim. Where I said today, Gavne Gazlan is true, teaching us two Gazlans. Faith with a different answer. This Braita is according to the B. The Rabbi says, Rabbi Omer, Ganav ki Gazlan. A thief is like a robber. And what Rabbi means, ki Gazlan, Rabbi Shimon. A thief is like a robber, according to Rabbi Shimon. What does that mean? Gufa. Rabbi says, Omerani Ganav ki Gazlan. I say that a thief is like a robber. A night thief is like a day robber. Ibai, who they asked. Does that mean that he's saying like a thief is like a robber according to Chachamim, and he's not acquire, like Rabbanan said? Maybe he says that it's like a robber according to Rabbi Shimon, and he does acquire it, that he stole. Yani there is Yush. Gemara says Tashma, Natlu Muhsin Chamaro. If the customs guy took a donkey and gave him something else instead, Mani, who's according to Rabbanan Kasha Gazani, Rabbi Shimon Kasha Ganav? Same thing as before. Same question. It doesn't fit. Whether Rabbi Shimon doesn't fit with the Ganav and Rabbi Yonan doesn't fit with the Gazlan. So the Gemara says, yeah, my question Rabbi Ki Gazlan, Rabbi Shimon Kamar Vakani. Makes sense according to the opinion that holds that Rabbi means that a thief is like a robber according to Rabbi Shimon, and it teaches me that a thief also acquires the item. How many is it according to Rabbi? He's according to Rabbi, who holds that a thief that steals or a robber that steals, both cases that steal, causes Yush and you acquire it. That's why he acquires it. But if you're saying that you do not acquire it, Hamani, who's it according to? Rabbi, it's not Rabbi. Rabbi Shimon. But look, Rabbanan doesn't feel according to anybody. That's our proof that Rabbi holds like Rabbi Shimon. Where it says not a good proof. Achma eskinan. This is Rabbi Shimoni. No, we talking about a case of armed robbers. The Gemara says, "Yahi hanu gazlan." It's in the gazlan. So maybe it is a good proof. The Gemara says, "No, today gavni gazlan." Same answer. Two types of gazlanim. Chidush. There is no chidush regarding that aspect, but rather, a gazlan, to any type of gazlan, whether it's an armed robber or a guy who steals that right, is acquiring it. Tashma. Hagana v'hagazlan v'ha'anas. The thief, the robber, or the forced sailor. The guy who forces sales. Hekdesh, hekdesh. We said before that they make it hekdesh, it becomes hekdesh. It becomes truma, makes it truma. Maaser, maaser, it becomes maaser. Mani, who's it according to? Ida banan kasha gazlan, according to Chamim, doesn't make sense because he holds that gazlan will not become Yush. Ida b'shimon kasha ganav, according to Bishmon, doesn't make sense because he holds that a ganav will not cost Yush. If you want to know that Rabbi means that the equivalent, the ganav is like a gazlan, then it makes sense. That's why it acquires it. Eliyamar ganav gazlan derebran, but according to Hamim, it would make sense. Mani, who's it according to? The Gemara says same thing, but Rabbi Shimoni, even according to Rabbi Shimon, would agree in a case of armed robbers. And the Gemara says, Yachi hanu gazlan, the same thing as a gazlan. The Gemara says, today gavna gazlan, two types of gazlanim. Hatashman bring a proof from the following. The Rabbi Shimon ber Rabbi taught Rabbi Shimon his son. When the Mishnah said a while ago, last week, sorry, that if the guy dies and leaves stolen property to his children, and then he said if it's a real property, they could keep it. Now we established that as karka, but it doesn't mean that. Even if it's a cow, the guy's using it to plow. Or or the donkey that the kid is using to walk behind it. Hayavin lahazir mipnei kavod avihen to return it because of honor to the father. So what do we see? Ta'amam mipnei kavod avihen. Only reason we have to return it is because of their father's honor. Halav kavod avihen lo. But if it was not for the father's honor, they would not have to return it. Shmami na Rabbi Gazan Rabbi Shimon ka'amar. We see from here that a thief is like a robber according to Shimon, and that's why he acquired it. And that's why the only reason to return it is not because you don't own it, but rather because of the honor of the father that passed away. Shmami, not good proof. Okay, now we're up to the bees. Very interesting stuff. A swarm of bees, you assume you gave up. My v'chen, what do you mean v'chen? What's the hidush? You say v'nechil shel continue. What's v'chen? The explanation is as follows. Even a swarm of bees that acquiring bees in the first place is halachad rabanan. Salka the high cave and rabanan who's the kind of this is only a guy who lost it, only owned it mid rabanan. I feel therefore, if we don't know whether or not it's yush, maybe you should assume it's yush. In the law, you have to know if there's yush. If not, you don't keep them. A child or a woman is believed to say this came from there, and these bees belong to that guy. They're going to ask the question. I didn't know a woman or a child is able to testify. No, it's the whole scenario. Where the owner was chasing after the bees. And the woman or child weren't testifying, but rather they said casually. There's a whole chidush about testimony via casual conversation. Even there are certain scenarios where goyim will be believed in that scenario. They were talking casually and said, "Oh, look, the bees came from this guy over here." In that scenario, they believe because they're not testifying. We don't treat casual talk as true testimony, except in the case where we're allowing a woman to remarry, meaning people were talking that the woman's husband died, and now there's casual conversation about it, what we heard. We say that's good enough testimony to say that he died. It's not true. We know the gates of the bees that it works. It says, that's only the Rabbanan, that's fine. One second, the law, but in Hilchot Doraita, casual talk does not count. Once a guy, he was just casually talking and he said, when I was a child, I was riding on my father's shoulder, they took me out of school. They gave me took off my clothes. And they put me in a mikveh, so I'll be able to eat teruma that night, showing that he's a kohen. Rabbi Hanina actually said, "Yeah, true. My friends also separate from me and tell me that Yochanan is the challah eater. He eats the Kohen's portion. And Rabbi allowed him to be a Kohen on that word. He allowed him to eat terumah. So we see that casual talking can be used as testimony even for the Chol Doraita. Be able to eat terumah. Where it says, no, but terumah drabanan. The banan terumah wasn't good enough. But we don't think that Doraita works. Rav Dima came and said, another rabbi said, there's a story that happened to Rabbi Shimon Levi. Was child talking and he said, my mother and I were taken captives with Goyim, which we are scared of them being violated. Unfortunately, it's happening nowadays. And every time I'd go out to get water, I would keep on checking my mom to make sure she wasn't touched. The call they seem to get wood. I'll keep on checking other. And she was still able to marry a Kohen on his words, saying that she remained Tehorah. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to marry a Kohen. So the Gemara says, no, and it's not a good proof, because over there we are lenient regarding captive women. A person should not cut off the tree to save his bees. The Mishnah said, but Rabbi Shmuel said that you can cut off the tree to save your bees. Tanya, Bertha says, Rabbi Shmuel ben Obresh, Rabbi Yochanan ben Komer. Tanya betin hu, it's Tanya bedin. The man can go to his friend's field to cut off the branch to save his bees. Then tell the he has to pay the branch to the guy. Another condition. If someone just spill out his cheaper wine from his barrel, and if he saves the honey of his friend that spilled into his barrel, then the friend has to pay him for his wine. And also another tonight. Similar situation. You're walking with donkey of wood. Other guys are walking with donkey of flax, which is more important, and his donkey died. Then you load his flax onto your donkey and save it, and he has to pay back. This is one of the conditions that Bnei Israel received Eretz Israel. We had this around 40 plus dabim ago. Interesting situation. A guy recognizes his item or his books in someone else's possession, and there's a robbery. Robberies were being reported in the city, in his house. He can swear that this is his item and he can take it back. If not, no rumors. He's not believed enough to say that it was stolen. Because technically the other guy can say, no, I bought it off Shimon, who bought it off you. So therefore, only if the rumor is able to swear to take it. Okay, there's a rumor. Maybe he sold the item, made the money, made up a rumor, and now he's trying to get it back. The people who were in his house, he got up in the middle of the night and said, my items were stolen. So we see that the rumors were already starting. The Gemara says, okay, you could still assume he started it. The Gemara says, no. There was a tunnel inside his house. And the people who were staying by him ran out with the stuff on their shoulders. And everybody was saying, you heard how the guy's item was stolen? Mar says, okay, but maybe they were only items and no books. Mishnah said both. They said, no, his items and his books were stolen. Maybe he's only small books, and he was saying that the big books were stolen. They were specifying which books it were. Maybe they were old books, and he's saying it's a brand new book, and he wants to get paid more. You're saying, no, these are the names of the books. He was actually identifying the actual items. Okay. You say that in case of a tunnel, they're chayav. Same sounds situation in the Torah and Maseches Hanedarim. The guy stole something through a tunnel into someone else's house and left, and he's caught. He's patur from paying back the item. Why? He acquired it with his blood. Meaning, since a person has full permission to kill a guy who's sneaking into your house through a tunnel, therefore, he was already considered a dead man, and therefore, if he steals anything successfully, he's patur from paying it back because he stole it through his quote unquote death or killability. So why would these guys be patur? Why would these be chayav if they stole it from a tunnel? That only applies when the guy is snuck into the tunnel. Over here, the because over there they risked the death from the start. Over here, since they were staying there, they didn't sneak in, they left through the tunnel, they were never at risk of dying. They do not acquire it and they're chayav to pay back. Only applies to the guy who is does not usually sell his items. Right? So if the guy doesn't usually sell his items, you don't need only so many details. You can assume, okay, the guy never sells his coin collection, and now you see it somewhere else. You can believe him. Okay, maybe he needed cash and he sold it. Over there, we can say that between the fact that he doesn't usually sell it and the fact that there's a rumor of robbers, then you can assume that it was stolen. Let's say the guy stole it, sold it, and then the thief is found. Who pays back who? The owner can chase after the thief and doesn't have to worry the buyer. Rabbi Yochanan says, the owner has to chase the buyer. In the Rabbi Yochanan's case, before it was Yeush, and therefore, Hadini Mashini, you can chase after the buyer because it was no Yeush, he took it without permission. But over here, we're in the case of you go after the thief, is Hadini Rishon is because the guy already gave up, and therefore the thief stole it. Both agree to Rav Hizda that said earlier that if you take something and you used it before Yeush, the owner can cut him either party. There's no machlok, a different way of explaining it. Over here is no machlok. Sorry, let me rephrase. There's no machlok. Regarding a Kohen's gifts that he receives from Korbanot, that's considered like something that's sold before Yeush, and there's still a machlok at the time. Mishnah says, the guy told the butcher, okay, sell me the innards of the cow. And there was the Kohen's gifts, the innards that belong to the Kohen were inside. The buyer gives it to the Kohen, and the butcher does not take it off the value of the original price that was agreed upon. However, if he weighed it, the buyer gives the Kohen the gifts, and then he can deduct the price from the butcher. Said over there, that only when he works when the buyer weighed it for himself. But if the butcher weighed it, then you can go after the butcher. So we see that you can only sue the butcher. But if he wants to go after the buyer, he has to pay for it. So there is a machloket in that situation. Doesn't mean that only after the butcher, also the butcher. Yani has either way, like we said earlier, hizda. You might think that you can't steal Kohanic gifts, and therefore you can't go after the butcher because it was not stolen. You can. According to Rabbi, who said there's machloket? What's the machloket they argue on? Rav Hizda, whether or not you go after both parties, only one. As a different way of explaining it, the cases where the guy gave up after the item was stolen, he gave up after the buyer already bought it. But he didn't give up while the ganav still had it. As follows. First, Rabbi Yochanan holds that if you gave up and then you sold it or change of domain, then the buyer gets it. However, but if you sold it and then the guy gave up, the buyer does not acquire it. The other opinion, Rav holds, no difference. Rabbi Yochanan will hold it the first way. Rav does not make a difference either way. The buyer automatically acquires it.